Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. You are at the New Beginnings Divorce Bootcamp. If that's what you were looking for, you are in the right place. We're going to give it just a minute or two to let everybody sign on, and we'll get started. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Looks like we've got everybody in so far. We'll start with just an introduction. Welcome to New Beginnings, Empowering Women Through Divorce. And tonight's webinar is the Divorce Bootcamp. So we are all going to give some good information on each of our professions as it relates to divorce. And we hope that you get some good information from each of us. Some housekeeping things. You will see that the chat is disabled, and that's for anonymity purposes, but you do have the ability to ask questions in the Q&A section. Go ahead and type any questions in as we're going, and we will try to answer those either live or with a chat response to you through that Q&A. But again, it's anonymous, so feel free to ask any questions. We started our group back just in May of last year, and we've had a webinar every month since then, and we've been able to help lots and lots of women, and we're hoping to help some more. Our next event is on February 18th, and you can find that on our Facebook page, Empowering Women Through Divorce. And we are going to start out, actually, we have a poll also. Rachel, if you want to go ahead and launch the poll, that is also anonymous. That's just for us to see sort of who's here and help us, gear our presentations towards who's in attendance tonight. So go ahead and click on that. If you don't see the poll up, you'll see it at the bottom. There's a spot for you to click on the poll. So welcome. We're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Renee Coleman. I am a residential mortgage lender. I'm also a CDLP, which is a certified divorce lending professional. This is what I do. I work in the divorce world every day. I am licensed in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. If you are in a different state, I have teammates that can help. And I am going to pass it over to Kate to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Kate Morneau. I'm a collaborative divorce attorney and mediator in New Hampshire. We're in Nashua, and I know a lot of you are joining us from other states. My presentation's kind of focused on New Hampshire, but like Renee, I have a lot of friends and resources in other states, so don't hesitate to reach out. How about Laura? We'll have you introduce yourself next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Laura Gamache. I'm a real estate agent licensed in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And just like the ladies also mentioned, I have agents that work all over the country. So if New Hampshire is not your hometown and you're outside, we have resources that we all work with every day. But like myself as well, I work with a lot of divorced couples at all various stages of their divorce. So just happy that you're all here, and I will definitely chat some more in a little bit. And I'll pass it to Barb.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barb Shigag. I am a CDFA, which is a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. a CPA and a CFA. So I am the numbers gal. So that's what I help you with. So I'm the financial side of the divorce. I work with clients pre, post, during. I meet you wherever you are. So I'm here to, hold clients' hands. I work with clients that are going through the process per se, that's without an attorney, with a mediator, with attorneys. I work as a financial neutral, which actually works out really well when you have one person combining both of the finances. It's a little bit less expensive. You're not paying for two people. So, my goal is to help people, help women any way I can on the financial side of a divorce. So I think we have Rachel left.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here tonight. If you've been on a New Beginnings webinar before, I'm stepping in for Robin Young tonight, and I'm happy to do so. I'm a certified financial planner and wealth manager at North Star Financial Planning. We're in Southern New Hampshire. We work with clients all over the country virtually. And our part of the process for women going through a divorce is during and post-divorce, especially. We bring a lot of transitionist experience, which means we're not only focused on the technical side of your planning and your decision making, but also the personal side. And I'll get into a little bit more of that later. But I'm happy to be here with everyone tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So we're going to start tonight with Kate, but I just want to mention for those that maybe jumped on a few minutes late, the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. You can ask questions. It is anonymous. We will try to answer all of your questions. And if you see at the bottom of your screen, there's also a poll, which is also anonymous. If you want to click on that, it just gives us some information on who's here tonight so we know how to gear our presentations. And with that, I'll send it over to Kate.
Thanks so much. So this is a lot of information, right? We said this is divorce boot camp, and that is what this is going to be. I'm going to give you kind of a high level view of the divorce process in New Hampshire, some ways to get divorced. It's not just one way to do it. I'm going to give you some information about how the New Hampshire court works, which could be different for other states, but you'll get a feel for what the New Hampshire courts are looking for, and what documents you're going to need to file in order to get divorced, and then timing. So it's a lot of information to cover. Any questions you guys have, please feel free to share those, because I'm sure if you're thinking it, other people are too. So I'm going to start. I've got a PowerPoint for you guys. Let's see. Hopefully everybody can see that. So again, New Hampshire divorce boot camp, start to finish the process. My agenda, I just went through that with you. We're going to talk about, again, the ways to get divorced, the different options for process, the court, how the court does things, if you go that route, what documents you need, and then again, how long does it take? So in New Hampshire, and I believe all states that I saw everyone registered from should have these process options. So the first is mediation, and most people have probably heard of that. This is a process where you can go with or without attorneys, and you meet with a neutral mediator. This person is going to help you determine, what are the issues that you are not on the same page with, maybe, and they're going to hear from both of you, what are your goals? What would you like to see accomplished? If you have kids, they're going to work a parenting schedule out with you. If you've got assets, they'll help you craft how those are going to be divided. And mediation is a really nice way to keep your costs down and to stay in control of the process. In New Hampshire, you can go through mediation either privately, where you pick the mediator, you don't even have to file for divorce yet, you can just start there, or the court will appoint you a mediator if you've already started the process. So in any case, as far as kids are concerned, the New Hampshire court is pretty much going to require you to try mediation first. So again, that's a great process. It's really, again, cost effective, low conflict too. So I highly recommend mediation. Again, I'm a mediator in New Hampshire, so I could tell you it's a really great process. The next, most people have not heard of collaborative divorce. If you have, again, you're in the minority, unfortunately, but collaborative is a process completely outside of the court. So like mediation, you're in control of the pace, you're in control of it. Collaborative brings in some extra professionals that will help you along the way. So everyone would have a collaborative divorce attorney. This is someone who's been trained in the collaborative process, promises never to go to court with you. They're only there to help you resolve things outside of court, and they promise to work together. So instead of everyone having their own lawyers, they're kind of at each other, it's everyone comes together. If I'm your collaborative divorce attorney, I'm giving you advice off to the side. I'm making sure you're educated as to what the law is and talking about what might be best for you. But I also am going to be working with your spouse's attorney or co-parent's attorney. And so it really is a supportive environment. Barbara had mentioned earlier that she is a collaborative financial. She is somebody who would look at all of your assets as a couple and help you work out what good budgets there are, what would be a good property division. And so she is a neutral person who would help you along with the finances. That's part of the robust process with collaborative. And then we have another neutral person who's called a coach. And this is someone who's got some mental health trained backgrounds, like therapists. They're not there to do marriage counseling. They're there to help you work through this divorce. That's their sole purpose. They're there to help guide as far as parenting goes. Anything along the way is there hot button issues? Is it really sensitive talking about who's going to live in the marital home maybe? So they're there to help facilitate the process. I highly, highly encourage people to learn about collaborative divorce and see if it could be a good fit for them. Once you're done with that process, everything is drafted, agreed upon, filed with the court. And in New Hampshire, you don't even have to step foot in court if you have a full agreement. So it's pretty amazing. The last process, which again, everyone's heard of, is court. So if you don't choose mediation, if you don't choose collaborative, if you can't just draft all the paperwork and file it together, court is there for you. This, in my mind, is the backup. So if you cannot come to an agreement with your spouse, co-parent, then the judge will make the decision for you, which, again, most people don't want to leave it in a judge's hands. They're busy. They give you very limited time to talk about your family and your circumstances. And it's a long process. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the court process works. So this is assuming that you did not settle. So court process, there's two ways in New Hampshire to start it. It's an uncontested divorce, which means everybody's in agreement. We have full paperwork agreed to. It's being filed. So let's say you guys sat down at the kitchen table, printed all the forms out you need from the court's website, agreed on everything. You'd be then filing an uncontested divorce, meaning you agree on it. In New Hampshire, if that all looks good to the judge, again, you're never stepping foot in the court. If you have a contested divorce, so anything is not in agreement, let's just say you agree on everything except parenting. Anytime there's something that's not in agreement, it's called contested. And that's when you're asking the judge to make a decision. In New Hampshire, in order to file for divorce, you would start off with a petition for divorce. That can either be an individual petition where you just decided this isn't working, I'm filing it on my own. Or you could do a joint petition where we both agree this isn't working. We just want to start the process in the court. So petition, it's pretty straightforward, checking the box form. And I'm going to just pull up real quick. I think this is important to show you. And most courts have this. Most states have this, I should say. The New Hampshire Judicial Branch, it's courts.nh.gov. This is an awesome resource. It has a ton of information. It's got all the forms you need to get divorced. They have tons of really, really helpful forms. So I just brought this one up. There's a whole divorce parenting. How do you file the divorce petition? How do you file a parenting petition? There's just like a wealth of information. And I'd say maybe 10 years ago, our court moved to saying, we need to help people be able to do this on their own because this is complicated. There is a lot that goes into filing for divorce and getting divorced. so much easier to get married, right? It's like just one form, justice of the peace, and you're married. Divorce, so complicated. So this is the forms section of that. So you could see, you can click right on, we're in the family division of the circuit court. That would bring you to a section where there's forms. So in here, there's a divorce parenting section. You can find all the forms that I'm going to tell you about tonight on the court's website, along with those really kind of cheat sheet versions of what you're going to need. So I highly recommend checking out the court's forms and helpful tips if you haven't. So let's say that you file a petition for divorce in New Hampshire. The next is to do a notice of filing. So if you file this with the court, they're going to say, well, we need to make sure your spouse knows about it. So they're going to send a letter out to your spouse saying a petition for divorce has been filed. Come pick it up, or we will send it by either certified mail or a sheriff. Again, most people don't want to have to go through a sheriff. So most people will go pick it up from the court if they get that letter. Then the court's going to schedule a hearing. They're going to schedule a status conference. Depending on if you have children or not, there's going to be the next piece where the court's going to say, okay, tell me what's going on. Do you need to have temporary orders? Do you need to have mediation? So in New Hampshire, you can get two types of orders. There's temporary, which is usually that first phase. The court would schedule a temporary hearing if you can't agree on anything. And that's where the court is just saying, on a temporary basis, what do you need? Who's going to live in the house? What is the parenting schedule going to be? What's child support going to be? What's alimony going to be? Just on a temporary basis while we kind of work through everything. That's a really quick 30-minute hearing. So it goes quick. It's one of the most important parts of the process, though, because it sets the stage for everything. I'd say if you're going to go with an attorney to any hearing, temporary hearing is the most important. And by the way, you can pick attorneys to go with you for some of this, for all of it. The next is the final hearing. So after some other things have happened, the final hearing is where you actually are testifying and there's witnesses. So like you kind of see on court, you take the witness stand and you're explaining to the judge, here's what I want on a final basis, a final parenting schedule. What do you want to have happen with the assets? It's all on a final basis. That is kind of way down the road, but those are how you get those kind of two orders. The documents needed, and again, all on the court's website. The first, in order to get your final divorce, you need to have a final decree of divorce. This document is what divides up all your assets. So it's going to have, again, check mark boxes, child support, alimony. Do you need life insurance to secure either of those? So if somebody should pass away, their child support is going to be covered with a life insurance policy. Talks about retirement, cars, personal property, bank accounts, pretty much anything that is financial in your marriage. It's going to talk about how the court's going to divide that up. The next is a final parenting plan. So this is a set document, again, in New Hampshire, that talks about holidays, where the kid's going to go for each holiday, if that's important to you. What's the routine schedule going to be? You know, when are the kids going to be where? New Hampshire just revised their laws as of January 1st, so a few weeks ago, saying that it is presumed that the children will be with each parent equally, that is in the best interest of the children. If they're not going to have that schedule, we need to justify why that is. So that is a pretty big change. We've never had anything like that in New Hampshire, where the judge now has to justify if it's not equal. But that's a big change that's come this year. Each of you will need to have a financial affidavit. Barb's going to talk about this in a little bit, but this is a document that's listing all of your assets, all of your income, all of your debts, your monthly budget. This is a really important document and you should spend a decent amount of time kind of looking at that and making sure it's accurate. Next one, child support guidelines worksheet. This is what determines what child support should be paid, if any. Again, huge change in the law just came out this year as of January 1st with major changes to the formula for child support. And it now impacts with parenting schedule. We never had that really before. But if you have an equal parenting schedule and equal incomes, it's presumed there will be no child support. So huge, huge changes with that. But you'll need that kind of formula. And every state has their own formula. Every state, does things different. So it's important to speak to somebody in your state about that. In New Hampshire, we've got the Uniform Support Order. This is what says what child support is. Is it, $200 every week? Is it $500 a month? Whatever it is, it says how it's going to be paid. It talks about who's going to pay for the health insurance for the kids, how are you going to split uninsured medical costs. So this form is important for if you have children. And then the last form that you may or may not need is the Uniform Alimony Order. So this is talking about alimony only. So if you're, again, another formula that is really gets a little bit complicated, but it's in the statute and a good lawyer will be able to run it for you. But alimony, are you getting alimony? If so, how long? How much? How is it going to be paid? And is there going to be a life insurance policy to secure that in case something happens? Are there any reasons that justify terminating alimony earlier than what you had been ordered? So again, New Hampshire, if you live with somebody, if you get remarried, there's lots of things that could impact your alimony order. So these are the important documents that you'll need for a final divorce. And then timing. We talked a little bit about the different processes. So in mediation, again, you're in control of the time. If you say, you know what, it's the holidays, I don't want to be dealing with this now, let's schedule this after the first of the year, which most people say to me, you get to say that. If we were in the court process, the court is just scheduling things. They could schedule it for Christmas Eve, they could schedule it for your birthday, they don't care. The court's scheduling it for when they're open, and you are lucky to get a date, and you better show up. That's how the court process works. But mediation, again, if you have some pretty limited issues that you're working through, mediation can be pretty quick and efficient. The mediators have good availability. There's really great mediators in the state. And so you could be in and out of mediation fairly quickly. Again, one of the reasons it's most cost effective too. The collaborative process, again, you're in control. So I've had some collaborative cases settle pretty quickly within, a couple months, where we're able to resolve everything. Once that happens, let's say we file it with the court is pretty quick in New Hampshire turnaround for anything uncontested. So anything agreed upon, we could get that back in a couple of weeks from the court saying it's approved. There's no wait period in New Hampshire. It's efficient. So courts love to see agreements come in. They love to sign them and get them off of their plate because there's a lot of not agreed upon things that they're seeing that they need to make room for. I was thinking about this answer today, but how long would it take for a contested divorce? If you filed the petition for divorce now, how would that impact things? How long would that take? It could be up to a year, if not more, depending on the facts, depending on if there's a lot of back and forth, as far as, is everyone disclosing their assets? Do we have all the pay stubs? Are there major issues with the kids that we need to keep going back to court on? Do we need to have an expert called a guardian ad litem come in and do an investigation to recommend a parenting schedule for the kids? So court can take a long time and it's totally out of our control. And they're busy. There's a lot of cases that they're dealing with, and there's not as many judges as we would like, although we're getting new ones all the time, but it's a lot. It's a process. And I would say if you are getting ready to do a contested divorce, pull on your resources. Make sure you've got a really good therapist that's going to support you. Make sure all your friends and family are on board with, you may need to come to them, just dump, some of the stuff off your shoulders. Make sure that you are, again, financially ready for that kind of long haul contested. But most cases, there's hope. Most cases are settling. I think there's only 2% that actually go to that full final hearing where you're testifying. So even if you feel like right now, we agree on nothing, we're never going to settle this, that won't necessarily be the case. That's not the norm. Eventually you'll be able to get something settled, unless you're that small 2%, which again, that's small. So that's kind of, again, super high level overview of the court process, the different options for going through divorce, whether you want to do mediation, collaborative, and I'm more than happy to dive into any of those further if you want. I'm also, I know you're going to get a lot of information tonight from our other panelists. So I hope this is helpful. And I hope that I know a lot of you had answered the poll that you're feeling anxious. We are here for you. We 100% get that. And if there's other topics you want to hear, please let us know because we want to make this a really important resource. All right, so I'll let Barb chat with you about financials, and thanks again for
Yeah,
listening.
Kate, there are a couple questions that I
Oh.
don't know if you want to answer them now or.
Oh, sure, I can. Or maybe I'll jump in after you go. After I've
Perfect.
had a chance to review.
Okay,
All right,
perfect.
thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Kate. Well, I'm sure you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the documents that, or with all of the process that Kate described. So the good news is you build a great team around you, and we will help guide you through it. So another one thing I wanted to point out at the start is each state has guiding rules and guiding documents that mandate certain disclosure. So if you're feeling overwhelmed when we start to talk about, what you're required, the good news is your spouse will be mandated by the courts to produce certain documents. So in New Hampshire, it's called Rule 1.25A. In Massachusetts, it's Rule 410. So these guidelines, they're pretty onerous and intensive. So some people waive some of their rights to them, but the good news is they're out there, and that's to protect you if you feel like you don't have access to it. So it's always helpful, especially if you're contemplating divorce, to start to think about some of these documents that you're going to need to produce, and if you can start to become familiar with it. So so part of the rules require years worth of bank statements, brokerage statements, mortgage statements, pay stubs. This is a big one. Getting a hold of pay stubs is great. There's a lot of information on that. And tax returns. You'll need to provide a couple years worth of tax returns, depending on your state, but at least 2 or 3 years. So, and the tax return is a treasure trove. Yeah, I know I'm a CPA, so I can kind of say this. I love tax returns. There's just so much information out there for you. So to the extent you see this lying around the house, or passwords to get certain things, this is the information you're going to need to produce. And even though your spouse might be required to produce it, it's a lot easier if you have it. And because people aren't always as giving with information as we want them to be. So all states will require some type of financial affidavit. And Kate had mentioned that in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, it's a financial statement, very similar. So what's on a financial affidavit is really a listing of all your assets. So you'll prepare your financial affidavit for any assets that are either in the joint name or in your name. So you don't have to worry about putting on your financial affidavit, your spouse's retirement fund, that would go on their financial affidavit. What really starts to, what I can't stress enough is the budget. All of the budgets, all of your financial statements will need some type of budget. And many people, if you're busy with the kids, you're working full time, maybe your spouse pays all the bills. The most common thing that I hear people say is, I'm not really sure how much our electric bill is. So these are the kind of things that, to the extent you find out now, you can better prepare yourself. So just talking a little bit about the budget, it's super important that it's accurate and complete, because the budget really determines your need. So when you talk about spousal support, it's ability to pay and need. So if you want to make sure your need is out there. I'm not saying pad the numbers, because then that will ultimately come back to you, but really try to be complete. Go through a couple months worth of bank statements. In your budget is going to be all your housing costs. So, think about it. Do you want to stay in your current home if you own a home? Will you rent? Start to do your due diligence as to how much it will cost to rent in your area or wherever you may move to. That's super important. I get that a lot. Like, I'm not really sure how much it's going to cost. Well, these are things that you can do now while you're contemplating. Insurance is something else, because typically there's one bill, there's one car insurance bill. Try to track that down, find out how much your car insurance is, how much the homeowner's insurance is. Um, Also, too, and this is a little bit of a nuance, but I just had an issue. Understand who the beneficiary designation is on all of your accounts. That's super important. Think about all your personal expenses, your clothes, your food, vacations, entertainment, any sports clubs that you may belong to. So I know it can be overwhelming, and this is a main focus, that I do help clients with. Attorneys can also help, because we see these every day. So if someone puts down $100 in food, I say, no, no way, it's a lot more than that. So this is an area that is a little intimidating, but we are here to help. The last piece I wanted to talk to is income. um, especially if you're contemplating, become familiar with all sources of revenue that comes into your house. So, weekly, monthly. So, what is your spouse's paycheck? What's his pay usually during the week? What's his, what's your pay? Does he or she get a bonus? Um, are they on commission? What does that typically tend to be? Do they have employee incentive programs like restricted stock? And you'll start to see vested and unvested thrown around. So, just so you know, that is all marital property. What I love about the mass form is when you fill it out, they probably have 100 different ways that you make income. And the last line is any that we haven't included. So, that really sums it up, is really all income, is supposed to be included. So, again, don't feel overwhelmed, because this is why building a good team around you is so important. And to help you with all this paperwork, it's a lot. And just assemble a good team, and don't be shy about asking for help and getting the right people around you. So that's all I have. I think Laura is next.
All right, thank you, Barb. Great information there. Hi, everyone. So definitely on the real estate side, having a real estate agent involved or as early as possible in the process is just very beneficial, especially if you have a lot of people's number one asset is their home. So a lot of that conversation comes and questions come around that is, can I keep my home? Can I not keep my home? Right. So there's a lot of questions that come around that. And as you start the conversations, with Barb, with Kate, a lot of times they're turning and asking what your home is worth. Right. And that's where I then would be pulled in the mix, doing a lot of market analysis for a lot of clients that are in the early stages of that divorce. So they actually know what that figure is, and they know what that equity would look like that they are at that point would be negotiating and with their attorney on behalf. So definitely having that market analysis and information readily available, so you can have that information to provide to Kate and to Barb as you kind of start talking through these numbers and the figures for sure. So just also assessing what your financial situation is, kind of what Barb kind of alluded to is a lot of the conversations, if you're, like, wanting to try to keep the home, what does it look like, right? What does that look like? Can you be able to afford that, right? Monthly payments of the mortgage, you have property taxes, you have insurance, etc. So a lot of things that you need to start looking at the actual financials of that to see if that's realistic. And Renee can get a little bit more into that as well, of just being able to take over as the sole person on the mortgage, if that's an option or not, to be able to know if you can afford that. And if it's not, then, a lot of the situations that we're seeing is if we're needing to sell the property, and then at that point, knowing what the proceeds are, and then at that point, moving forward, getting you lined up, because sometimes just having a nice new fresh start is sometimes more beneficial for both parties, but can be very emotional at the same time. So definitely building that emotional support team around you as you're going through this, because again, the home, a lot of memories are there. So when we're kind of starting to selling it, a lot of people can get very emotionally involved. So just a lot of things to really kind of start wrapping your head around when it kind of comes to that contemplation of what you're needing to do with the property. So that is one thing. When you are starting and going into this, obviously you want to be able to have as much information up front to be able to negotiate, so you have that settlement and know what those funds look like, so setting up your future, what those next steps look like, right? So those are just other big ticket items that you need to really kind of keep in mind with that. Also the timing of the year, right? So right now, good time of the year, January, we're heading into the spring market. So a lot of people, if they're, starting in the divorce process now, thinking that it would be leading to selling up the property, again, spring, summer market definitely are busy of the market. So again, trying to capitalize in the different markets. Obviously right now we've been in a seller's market for a number of years now here in New Hampshire, other parts of the country. It has been changing their markets. So, right. So just needing to kind of keep those in mind, what type of market you're in when it does come, right time. So if it's something that we need to sell immediately, are you in a buyer's market? Are you in a seller's market, right? So all those come into factor as well when you're kind of looking into whether contemplating what you need to do with the property itself. So again, pulling us into the mix as early as possible in the process. You have all those numbers, and things just take time, right? In a market that can be very competitive, we need to really set things in motion of where people are going to go. A lot of times we're doing that first. So we have some kind of housing lined up already. So when the home sells, you already you have a place to go, right? So because a lot of times as people, if you're in this area, familiar with the market, can be a little challenging finding something, right? Homes can sell pretty quickly. However, home sales, great. Now, where are you going? Right. So a lot of the times I'm really working with both parties, whether are we going to do some type of interim living? Are we going to do a rental first? Are we going to go right into a purchase? So just a lot of questions that come around that, but really sitting down and looking at that timeline with a professional is really just helpful. So you can just making sure that you have all your kind of ducks lined up in a row so you don't get yourself caught in any kind of sticky situations of just not having a place to go, especially if you have kids in the mix, right? You have school. A lot of people want to time that. So over the summer, you're moving, so people can be ready and lined up to start in the school year. So again, just a lot of things that kind of can be going on and in the mix, but we're here to help. We're here to be a resource on many levels at very kind of easily minimal, no cost for sure. But one last little piece too that I always kind of would really suggest too, especially if you're kind of in the early stages, is just keep an eye on your credit and things that can affect your credit, especially if you're thinking to buy out a partner or needing to sell, go buy something, or even a rental. Everybody's checking credit nowadays, right? So everything's needed there. So just one thing that a lot of people can get into sticky situations and unfortunately can affect the credit. Just keep an eye on that. We don't all check our credit scores and things that affect our credit. And I'm sure Renee can speak more to that, but just things that you just want to make sure just don't get absolutely kind of beaten up during the process of divorce. You're just come out and you're just in a really more difficult situation. So my last little tip there is keep an eye on that. But other than that, we're here for questions, here for how we can help in any other way that we can. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Laura. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about your mortgage, if there is a family home involved, and what your options are. So as Laura mentioned, and I think Barb talked about it and Kate talked about it, uh, your house is likely one of the largest assets that you have, right? And when we talk about the division of all of your assets, your house is one of them. So determining the value of that asset is where Laura will come in, where she's going to do a market analysis for you and let you know what value your house has. And what we're really looking at is the equity. So the equity would be the value of the house minus any mortgages on the home. And that equity that's left is what's being split. And so you have lots of options, lots of things to think about. And how do you make that decision, right? So you could keep the house, one of you could keep the house, you could sell the house, or maybe you own the house jointly for a particular length of time. That's also an option. And of course, Kate can talk a little more to the legalities of that and timeframes and things like that. So in order to help you make the decision of whether you should keep the house, or perhaps sell and purchase your own home, you need to find out what you qualified for, right? So the mortgage comes into play here. So Laura mentioned your credit. That's going to be the biggest factor. We want to make sure what your credit looks like, right? Over time, I think we all forget, maybe there's a credit card that was opened a long time ago and you'd forgotten about it. Maybe you're joint on something that you had forgotten about. So the sooner we look at that and see what credit is in your name, the better, because that's going to help you as you go through this divorce process and just knowing, because all of those accounts should be accounted for in the final divorce agreement, right? Whose credit card is it? Whose car is it? Whose name is on the debt? Whose name is on the title of something? So all of this comes into play. And as Barb was talking about, gathering all of these documents, by having your credit pulled and we know what's in your name, it can make that a little bit easier for you. A couple of tips for your credit. Be very, very careful about closing accounts because that will hurt your credit. So talk to a lender early in the process. We're going to help you look at all of these things. And, if there's a few hiccups in the credit, we can work with you to help you fix that. There's certain things that we can do in preparation, right? We want to make sure that you're going to qualify, right? If you're the spouse wanting to keep the house, for instance, if there's a mortgage on the house, most cases we see both spouses on the mortgage. So when we talk about splitting that house and one spouse keeping the home, you have two different things. You have the title to the property and you have the mortgage to the property. The title is what shows ownership in the property. And so regardless of whether you're on the title or not, if you're wanting to keep the home, that's okay. It's still marital property. And removing somebody from the title of the property is super simple. It's a quitclaim deed. It gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds. It's not a big deal. The mortgage, however, removing somebody from the mortgage is a little more complicated. It's not as simple as taking somebody's name off of the mortgage. And it's not as simple as if your final divorce agreement says that you've been awarded the home and you're responsible for all of the payments, including the mortgage. That's great, except from the lender, your existing lender, this financial or this final divorce agreement does not supersede your original contract with your lender. That both spouses are still responsible for that. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, your ex-spouse would still be responsible for that debt. So the only way to remove somebody from a debt is to pay the debt off, right? So you could sell the house and that would remove the spouse from the mortgage. Or you can refinance the mortgage. Now, I know that's a touchy subject these days with the way rates are, but that's the only way. There is one other option, and it's called a mortgage assumption. And that is where you assume the existing mortgage. So your lender has to approve that. Not every loan is assumable. And what it does is it would take the existing loan and the existing terms of that loan. So, if you've got 17 years left on the term and it's at a 3% interest rate, it would stay the same. Now, you do still have to qualify for that mortgage. So the lender treats it as if it's a brand new loan. And you will have to go through all of the qualifying. So they're going to look for income documents, and they're going to pull your credit, and they're going to look at everything just like a lender would if you were purchasing a new home. So an assumption, again, they're getting a little more acceptable these days, but it's going to be up to every individual mortgage servicer to determine that for you. So always call and check. But if you can't, the only other way to remove somebody from a mortgage is a refinance. So talk to a lender early, right? What we don't want to see happen is you sign the final divorce agreement and you come to me and you say, great, I was awarded the house and I have 60 days to refinance to remove my ex-spouse from the mortgage. And I put the numbers together and you don't qualify. And I've seen it far too many times. So you want to talk to a lender early on in the process. We will work with your whole divorce team, right? This can be a very collaborative approach. We'll work with your attorney or your mediator. We'll work with your financial advisor. We'll put all the numbers together so you'll know, right? If I tell you you qualify and then I tell you what the mortgage payment's going to be, maybe that's not exactly what you had planned. But by talking to your advisor, somebody like Barb, to help you understand, the financial implications down the road, it might not be the right thing for you, even though I can qualify you. So knowing ahead of time only helps in this process, right? If you go to your attorney and you say, I want to keep the house, great, your attorney's going to help you to do that. But let's make sure you qualify for that. So again, talk to a lender early so you know the process. Last thing I want to mention is support, so child support and alimony. Both of those are, we can use both of those to qualify you for a mortgage, but there's lots of rules around it. But short answer, yes, you can use support as income to qualify you for a mortgage. But again, talk to us early so you know the rules and everything is in place. So when the time does come to refinance that mortgage, we already know, and we know that we can qualify you, and we know that we can move forward with that refinance. That's it for me. I do want to mention, I'm going to put in the chat for you to see a link to, I have a divorce guide that you can download, and it goes into a little bit more detail as far as the mortgage goes, and it talks a little bit about the assumptions. It talks about a refinance and how we qualify you for that. So I will put that in the chat for you. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel now. Thanks, Rachel.
Great, thanks, Renee. So I'm here to kind of add, once you've gone through a divorce, you worked with these lovely ladies, you're on the other side. Once a decree is signed, there is a lot to do, a lot of decisions to be made. And more than likely, it's the first time you're making these decisions on your own. In my experience, women often feel like they're not ready to move forward with some of these decisions, or they're not qualified. However, I put together a short list of a few steps that I think will help you kind of take some of that control of your financial future and give you a better sense of, peace and well-being, and then get you ready to create that exciting next stage of life. So first, I kind of wanted to reiterate what most of the other women said is build your team, start as early as possible. The one thing I would add to what they said earlier is it's important to remember that you don't have to use the same people that your ex-spouse did. For example, if you don't have a good working relationship with your previous tax preparer or investment advisor, please take the steps to find someone you do feel connected with and that you want to work with, that respects you as a client, that doesn't talk down to you, and that really creates that positive client experience for you, because you deserve that. the next step and where I and my team come in to help is getting divorced financially. So this is the somewhat tedious task of following the decree, executing that asset division that you've agreed to. And your team, again, is here to help you go through these steps. So it's things like consolidating, simplifying accounts, combining them, putting them in your name, moving forward with the quadro, removing your name from debt if the decree ordered so. So usually a big to-do list there. And as Barb mentioned too, my other recommendation is to get a handle on your cash flow. So you've gone through the work of figuring out what it was kind of pre-divorce, and now you're kind of on the other side, and what's the new normal when it comes to spending. This is going to take some time, right? Because things are very much in flux immediately following a divorce. And so I found it helpful for clients to start to track kind of what's coming in, what's going out. There's a lot of really great tools online to kind of help you do this automatically, so it's not, a manual process. And I know cash flow and budgeting can be a scary word, and sometimes we want to just avoid that, but knowledge is power. And I think truly understanding what your cash flow situation is can really help guide you in your spending decisions, in your future financial decisions. I also recommend, of course, working with a financial advisor to create a financial plan. It's hard to make some of those big decisions about housing. Do I stay in the house? Do I downsize? Work, do I have to keep working at my current rate, or do I need to go back to work? Or even big purchase decisions. It's hard to really know what to do there if you don't have a financial plan to help ground those decisions and really understand how they could impact your long-term financial future. So working with a financial advisor can really help you understand, like, okay, if I'm, these are my options and what's the impact of each and which way do I want to go. And then finally, and I'm just going to share a quick slide here, is remembering that divorce is a major life transition. So at North Star, we like to approach these transitions kind of with a 3-phase framework. So as you can see, the first stage is sort of loss or ending, which is the time during and immediately following a divorce. So your primary focus should be just taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, focusing on your immediate needs, and refraining for making any of those big irrevocable decisions. So this is not the time to make a big investment decision or make a huge purchase. Kind of give yourself time to, like I said, let the dust settle. The next phase, or growth, and it's growth and journey. So this is where some of the dust is settled. So now is the time to explore your options, make some of those decisions, and really beginning to create new notions of what you want your life to look like. So during this time, I recommend, taking your time, continue to focus on your mindset, and most importantly, reach out for support. So this is both, support from peers and support from professionals. Our role with clients during this phase is to act as their guide and really help them have clarity and confidence as they kind of take those next steps forward towards the life that they want. And really to get them to that final stage of grace and transformation, which is a really exciting period of reinvention where you're living a life that aligns with your values and goals. And it could be, even better than you ever dreamed. So with that, I think we have a few minutes left to answer a few questions so we can bring the team back.
Thank you, Rachel. You're welcome. So we have lots of questions in the Q&A. We love that. If there's anybody else that has a question, feel free to put it in there and we'll answer real quickly.
One of the really good questions that kept coming up tonight was, does it matter who files first? So kind of who's the petitioner? And it really doesn't in New Hampshire. The only benefit if you don't have an agreement is it starts the clock ticking. So when the other person is served, child support can then start. Alimony can then start. It can go back to the date that they got served. So that's a major benefit if you're looking for child support or alimony to get that clock kind of started sooner rather than later. Another thing that it does is it puts a kind of freeze on all the assets. So you can't sell anything, buy anything, transfer anything without an agreement or an order from the court. So if you're afraid that someone is going to take the money and like run or go buy a big boat or something, you know, that's not normal, getting it filed, being that petitioner, getting it filed and getting the other person served is really important. Not that you can't deal with it later, but if you're afraid of that, sometimes money is gone. Once it's gone, you know, it's kind of hard to get it back. So that's a really good question. And that's New Hampshire specific. Other states, there may be a benefit. Whoever the petitioner is, that's the court that you're going to be filing in. So sometimes if the other person lives kind of far away, it's beneficial to be the petitioner because then you don't have to travel as far for court. So another kind of benefit. But those, we got asked that a couple times tonight, so those are good questions. There's some other financial ones. Do you guys want to touch on any of those that we got? Any big ones? And Renee, there was a couple about if your name's not on the mortgage, is that worth talking about?
Yeah, sure. So even if your name isn't on the mortgage or the title to the property is still marital property. And from a lender's perspective, depending how long, I mean, if you've only lived there for 6 months, we might not be able to do it. Generally, it's a year. But we can still refinance you, even if you're not on the title. And there's something called the Garnes-Saint Germain Act, where if you're not on the mortgage and now you're going to be responsible for paying that mortgage, this act protects you and enables you to access documents, mortgage statements, and the account itself, even if it's in your spouse's name. So there are some protections in place for you. But to answer that question, yes, we can still do the mortgage, even if your name isn't on the mortgage or the title.
There were a couple questions about the length of time you need to save statements going back. So depending on your state, it can be anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So it's a significant amount of data. You could decide as a couple not to go back that far. A lot of people have joint accounts. If you have a joint account, maybe you don't need to go back that far, but that is, you know, the mandatory disclosures are that high. And then the other thing I did want to mention too is, you know, a lot of women are taking care of the child, doing just about everything there is to do in the house. So the other spouse, you know, handles a lot of the finances. And, you know, don't be afraid to look for help, and don't be afraid, and don't feel like, oh, I should have known this, or you know, if you don't have control and you feel like someone's hiding something or that you're really not sure, you know, don't hesitate. And if you feel like an attorney would be threatening, you know, look for a CDFA or an investment advisor to talk to about what your concerns are, what the assets are, what you think is being missing. So, you know, this is one area where you really sometimes have to stand up for yourself.
And we had a question in there, is this being recorded? It is being recorded and it will be sent out to everybody that registered for the event tonight. Oh, you're on mute, Kate.
Thanks. Barb, there's a question there that says, if there's financial abuse, is it recommended to get separate accounts? Or is transition from a joint account to my own?
Yeah, I always recommend to people to get their own account, to get their own credit card. That's, I think, really important so that they can be establishing credit. And then especially if you feel like you're putting money in an account and your spouse just takes it and spends it, you have every right to set up your own joint account. I mean, you have to declare everything. So if the goal is to set up your joint account, so then you think you can hide it, that wouldn't be the case. But if you want to have more control over it, you're certainly entitled to, have an account and, but then you'll just have to disclose it.
Yeah, we had a ton of really great questions. Thank you for sending those in. I'm not sure if there's anything else. I know we're at 6 o'clock now.
Yeah.
Do we want to take this last question? As far as alimony is concerned, so if your spouse has always made significantly more, and then there's some mental health issues, could it be switched and would the other person have to pay him alimony? That's pretty state specific, but if you are on government assistance, odds are you're not gonna have the ability to pay any alimony. In New Hampshire, alimony is, does the other person have a need for alimony and can you afford to pay it? So if you're in government assistance, my guess is that you are basically able to pay maybe your own expenses and that's it. Hopefully those. So I wouldn't really be too worried about an alimony claim in that situation.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, I think that's it for tonight then. Thank you guys so much again for attending and asking so many great questions. I hope that you could join us on February 18th. We have some really awesome speakers lined up this year that hopefully will bring a ton of great information to you all as well. Any last thoughts from the panel?
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Night, everyone.
everyone.